I am continuing in my reading. What I'm doing in this series is to read through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am continuing reading in a chronological order, according to event, not according to publication or volume. So I'm skipping around a bit as I move along. So we continue with our reading in the Gospels now. We're going to be turning to John. We've read the baptism of Christ, the temptations of Christ. And after all that, he comes back to the area where John is baptizing. And John points him out and tells everybody, you were asking me who Christ was, and this is him. In this video, we have a Joseph Smith translation. Now, what the Joseph Smith translation is, this is a translation or correction done by Joseph Smith to restore those passages that have been lost or corrupted over the years. Now, we pick this up again in John chapter 1. We're going to start in verse 35 and finish out the chapter. Again, the next day after John stood and two of his disciples, and looking upon Jesus as he walked, he saith, Behold, the Lamb of God. And the two disciples heard him speak, and they followed Jesus. Then Jesus turned and saw them following, and saith unto them, What seek ye? They say unto him, Rabbi, which is to say, being interpreted, Master, where dwellest thou? He saith unto them, Come and see. They came and saw where he dwelt, and abode with him that day, for it was about the 10th hour. One of the two which heard John speak, and followed him, was Andrew, Simon Peter's brother. He first findeth his own brother Simon, and saith unto him, We have found the Messiah, which is, being interpreted, the Christ. And he brought him to Jesus, and when Jesus beheld him, he said, Thou art Simon, the son of Jonah. Thou shalt be called Cephas, which is, being interpreted, a stone. So this is the day after John gave his testimony of Christ. Remember that John was interrogated by the Pharisees. Sometime after Christ was baptized, he gets interrogated by the Pharisees, and he says, No, I'm not Christ. I'm not the Elias to restore. I'm not that prophet. I am the Elias to prepare. And the next day, Christ is among the people, and John points him out and says, There's Christ. This is the next day. Andrew and one other disciple of John the Baptist, they've probably been baptized, and they're there to hear John preach. And while they're listening to John, while they're talking to him, Christ comes along, and John says, Hey, look, there's the Christ. There's the Lamb of God, the Son of God. And immediately, Andrew and his companion go and follow Christ. And they ask, Where are you staying? They want to talk to Christ now. Christ says, Yeah, come on home with me. Andrew, however, goes and gets his brother, Simon. He brings him to Christ. And Christ knows him on sight. And he renames him Cephas, which is the Hebrew. Cephas is Hebrew. Peter is what he will be called in other Gospels. But Peter is just the Greek form of Cephas, which is stone. As soon as John identified him, these men went to follow him. They were men of true faith. They were looking for the Christ. When John identified Christ, they followed Christ. Now let us continue verse 43. The day following, Jesus would go forth into Galilee, and findeth Philip, and saith unto him, Follow me. Now Philip was of Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. Philip findeth Nathanael, and saith unto him, We have found him, of whom Moses in the law and the prophets did write, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. And Nathanael said unto him, Can there any good thing come out of Nazareth? Philip saith unto him, Come and see. Jesus saw Nathanael coming to him, and saith of him, Behold, an Israelite indeed, in whom is no guile. Nathanael saith unto him, Whence knowest thou me? Jesus answered and said unto him, Before that Philip called thee, when thou wast under the fig tree, I saw thee. Nathanael answered and saith unto him, Rabbi, thou art the Son of God. Thou art the King of Israel. Jesus answered and said unto him, Because I said unto thee, I saw thee under the fig tree, believest thou? Thou shalt see greater things than these. And he saith unto him, Verily, verily, I say unto you, hereafter ye shall see heaven open, and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man. Now this is an interesting one. First of all, he identified Simon by sight, without being introduced. And the next day, they stay with him, Andrew and Simon and whoever else. It doesn't identify the other disciple, although I'm thinking that it was probably John, the author of the Gospel, which is why he's not directly identified. But they stay with Christ that day, and the next day, Christ is heading back to Galilee. He came down here to be baptized, and he was here for the temptations and everything, but now he's got to go back up to Galilee and the city of Nazareth. And as they're getting ready to go, they meet Philip. And Philip goes and Christ calls Philip to follow him, and then Philip goes and gets Nathanael. And I like Nathanael's response. Nazareth wasn't part of any prophecy. Can there any good come out of Nazareth? Meaning, Christ is supposed to be born in Bethlehem. People know this. Why are we going to Nazareth? And Philip just says, well, come and see. And I like that he identifies him. I saw you sitting under the fig tree. Meaning that Christ apparently had a vision of the 12 apostles. He knew who he was going to call long before he actually called them. I think probably during that 40 days fasting in the wilderness, God showed him who his apostles were going to be. And when he identifies Nathanael, that's enough for Nathanael, and Nathanael follows him. Now, let us look at the Joseph Smith translation. There's actually very little here. Most of this is just grammatical updates, changing the word saith to said, changing which to who. They do have some minor clarifications where, like in verse 40, one of the two which heard John speak and followed him was Andrew, Simon's brother. But Joseph Smith corrects this. One of the two who heard John and followed Jesus was Andrew. So just a clarification, not a change in meaning. There is this one very interesting one here, though, in verse 42. The King James said, and he brought him to Jesus, and when Jesus beheld him, he said, Thou art Simon the son of Jonah, thou shalt be called Cephas, which is by interpretation a stone. Joseph Smith renders this, Thou shalt be called Cephas, which is by interpretation a seer or a stone. And they were fishermen, and they straightway left all and followed Jesus. So he's not just calling Peter a stone, he's calling him a seer. And this goes back to the seer stones, the Urim and Thummim. The only one who can use the interpreters or the Urim and Thummim is a seer. So Christ is here telling Peter that he is going to have that gift, which according to the Book of Mormon is the greatest gift men can have in mortality, is the gift of seership. The only other interesting change here is that, and most of it is just changing saith to said and all that, but you do have this in verse 44 where it says, Now Philip was of Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. Now this would mean that Philip, that was his hometown. He was from that place just like Andrew and Peter were. But Joseph Smith says, now Philip was at Bethsaida. So this wasn't Philip's hometown. He had come down to hear John the Baptist. He'd come down to be baptized. And while he's here, he is called by Christ. But it's not his hometown. I like that change. It's a very subtle change. It doesn't really give us really any profound knowledge, but it gives us a little bit more understanding of Philip. I'm going to leave that here, and we're actually going to turn back to 3rd Nephi next, and then we'll come back to the Gospels. So I will see you there.